back, freedom fighters. It's your host, Mason and Nick.
What's up, everybody?
You say that every time, Nick. You gotta come with a better intro.
Oh, like you haven't used freedom fighters before.
No, they used to be the freedom freaks, but now we're just the freedom fighters.
Yeah, but I feel like that sounds like we're,
Like
we're a
we're
revolutionary group or something.
like the you think like we're gonna get pulled off the internet?
I don't know. It sounds like we're gonna rebel or something.
So, not to get into a conspiracy, but I was reading about the Waco, Texas incident today, and I
Wait,
know
what
that
happened in Waco, Texas?
basically this group created like their own compound. You know how you know what it's like I don't want to say cult because cult is definitely a word that's been created to have a negative connotation, but it was essentially a cult. But they started having they started getting so self-sustainable. Okay, this is the conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory is that they were getting so self-sustainable that the federal government actually saw them as a threat to they are not dependent on us anymore, and therefore they're a threat to our power, and so they came up with an excuse to kill them all. But really, what they got caught for was this is apparently what happened was that some uh, so they were shipping guns, illegal gun parts. That's part of how they made their profit, and which is illegal. So right off the bat, it kind of kills the conspiracy. But we can take it a little farther. So apparently, the a mailman accidentally looked into one of their packages and saw the gun parts, and then called in the FBI. But let's be honest, they probably had them under surveillance for long before they got caught for that. So I mean, at the end of the day, they were doing something illegal by federal law, so it kind of disproves the conspiracy, but at the same time, it's also so
Well, you
I don't
see,
know.
I don't know. I'm just weird, but something that caught my eye on that story was the mailman. So, if it's true that he looked into their package, so yes, the mailman did a good deed by calling the FBI, but he did a terrible thing by actually looking into the package.
Well,
Is
no,
that
I
not
think
like
it
an
was.
invasion
I
of
think it
privacy?
was. I think so. I didn't actually read the whole thing, which you probably should have read more into it before we started talking about it in front of all of our listeners. But I think it was more like something happened that maybe he dropped the package or something and it just happened to break open. I don't know what it was, but so I'm just saying that legally the government is cleared for whatever actions they took. But essentially, what happened was they used. This is what I'm saying. This is where the conspiracy really is, or where you can kind of get behind it, is the fact that the argument is that although justified, the government used this raid as a way to stop illegal gun trade, which should be stopped per se. But in doing so, then the people that lived in Waco started to fight back, and at which point the FBI just killed everyone. So it was like, all right, did you just kill everybody, or were you trying to stop some illegal gun trade? I don't know. Or are you just trying to wipe out a group of people that you saw as a threat to, the government?
So the way I haven't read the story, but just from what I've heard from your part of the story, don't think it's a conspiracy. I could see it being just as simple as mailman saw what was in the package, reported it, and then the FBI took them down.
You always got to be
It
worried
could
though.
be just that simple.
So you always got to be worried though, because everyone has heard the saying that history is written by the winner, which is true. History is written by the winner. The story is written by the winner. So you have to be wary, and it's something that it's very hard for people to get their head around. And it's part of freedom of thought. Freedom of thought is not you don't have to be crazy. You don't have to be questioning everything. You don't have to be you don't have to be like Alex Jones, and which on that point, I was in one of Joe Rogan's podcasts, and he was talking about Alex Jones and said, "Hey, I've met the guy. He's not that bad of a guy." But what he thinks happened was that he became so enveloped by conspiracy theories that he started to believe they all were true. So that's why he actually like quote unquote lost his mind per se to where now he thinks
Well,
all conspiracies are true.
well, I could see how that could easily be a thing where like you surround yourself around it, and then you're right one time out of like 1,000. Now you
Right.
think all of them are right.
But which one is right though? That's the question. If one is right, so out of Waco, JFK, MLK, we can even get weird with the 9/11, Pearl Harbor. Like, if you guys have heard of any of these conspiracies, if any one of those five I just listed were true, the world implodes. You know what I mean? So what do we say there?
Well, I don't think he was right about any of this. Is the thing. He was probably right about like some really small thing, and he probably got surrounded. He probably just got false confidence off of that. But
I'm just saying that you have to be wary of the information you're fed. You really do, because you never know. Because all what think if this is what people don't realize, and this is part of freedom of thought. It's asking questions and doing research on your own. You have to be proactive in everything you do. That's what freedom empowered is all about. It's taking action. It's being proactive. It is flipping that switch from off to on. It's that switch that has been turned off by society and by complacency, whether it be a complacency of comfort or just a complacency of your position in life as an employee and as not being in control of your own life. Whichever it is, whether it's you're forced to be complacent or you're complacent just because life is so comfortable that you choose to be complacent, whichever it is, your switch has been turned off. And that's what we're doing here on Freedom and Power is to flip that switch on, to get you to be proactive, in your finances, to be proactive in your movements, in what you do. And part of it is to be proactive in your thought. And it's not to just take every piece of information that you hear at face value. Because when we talk about things like this, we talk about winners write history, the fact is that outside of your immediate field of control, outside of the things that you see firsthand, everything else, all the other information you got from a third party, you got from a secondhand source where someone told you something that they saw, or even more likely you read it somewhere. And every place that you read something, they have a goal at that place, whether it's Fox News, CNN, CNBC, whether it's some online news agency. All of these places, they have a goal, and they specifically tailor the stories that they're telling you based on whatever their goal is.
well, all right. So like to put it in like a very simple way is like so I was talking to someone and they're telling me about someone else's breakup, and then so the way they explained it was just there's three sides to every story. So using the breakup example, there's his side, her side, and then the truth.
Right.
So a lot of what people are fed is his side and her side.
Right.
They're just fed with they're fed a certain angle.
Right.
And then there's the truth of all of it, which
Right.
a lot of people may not hear.
And I'd say that's my point, is not to say one source is more credible than the other, but it's to make you aware of just how much of the information you receive on a daily basis is first vetted and created by a third party. You know what I mean? Like, I always used to take this. This is always an interesting example. This is totally off the radar, and I'm crazy for saying it, but I'm gonna say it anyways. I used to always think whenever I would fly to school, like, what if all of us just lived in this big like compound, like some like The Giver. Have you read the book The Giver?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's all
I
controlled.
love that book.
Like, what if when I took off from the plane and then landed, I low-key just landed in the same place that I took off from, but just a little bit different? Like, how do I know that I traveled 1,000 miles or 2,000 miles? You know what I mean? Have I seen it with my own eyes? Have I personally driven across the country? So even that, and that's like an absolutely insane example. But the point is that how much information do you receive on a daily basis did you actually vet with your own two eyes? How much? Freedom of thought. Freedom of thought. Multiple sources. Trusted sources. Maybe doing some proactive research on your own. Maybe getting out there and go figure it out yourself. You know what I mean? Like instead of going and when we're talking about politics, instead of just listening to one of the news agencies that 100% has a side, what if you just went to your local government building and looked up some stats your own on your own? You know what I mean? What if you made one of your vacations, take a trip out to DC and go to the National Archives and get some information on your own? Go to the library. I mean, freedom of thought is not the most exciting one, but it's true. Like, what if you did that? It's it's part of life.
This is a little off topic from what you're saying, but something I've always wondered, and so you listeners who are in the UK, shoot us an email at freedompower.contact@gmail.com. But I want to know how you guys are taught the American Revolution.
Right.
They have to teach it a different way.
It has to,
you know
because
I mean?
because here's what I'm saying. So the American Revolution, and this is coming from an American, this is coming from a definite patriot, myself. But the American Revolution is one of those wars where it wasn't good guy versus bad guy. If you want to talk about good guy versus bad guy, World War II was one of the most clear-cut wars. You know what I mean? Because even after that, we were fighting communism, and once again, I do not believe in communism, and I think that it just cannot work out. So even then, you're like, okay, but when you go to communism, now we're just picking two political ideologies, where I still think there is a definite better one. It gets more unclear. But when you go to the American Revolution, like, love America, love that we're free. I think that England definitely treated us like a colony and definitely treated us as lesser human beings, as a lesser society, because the only purpose of a colony is to build yourself wealth and resources. That's the purpose of a colony. It's to go to a place, especially back then, it was to go to a place and have the openness to resources and to grow your wealth. So if that was our purpose, they treated us as such, and we said, we no longer want to be treated as just your mine for resources. We want to be free. So I completely support and once again love America. Great. But it is a less clear cut of a thing. Can the British go in history class and say, you know what, we were evil, horrible people? I don't think they do. I would like to hear what they have to say.
Well, yeah. So like we were taught like the Americans revolted for their freedom, you know?
Right.
But are the British taught the Americans were rebels and they won like their rebellion? Does that make sense? Like,
right.
Like each word has its own connotation.
No, I completely agree. And that ideology can go throughout everywhere. So this is another one for political. Let's go political for a second. It's not political, but it shows you how your ideas are molded based on where you're from. So we're saying England versus America there, right? So I want to talk urban versus rural, right? So it's going to go hand in hand with urban versus liberal. Or no, urban versus rural, but then liberal versus conservative. So this is a very smart guy once told me this. He gave me this idea where this is where I go, hey, like how different are we as people? I don't know. But he says that there's a lot of places in America where it's a very rural area where people have a farm and they have a bunch of land. They have their own water source. A lot of places out in the country, they have a pump that they get their water from. Even I have a buddy who gets his electricity created from a propane gas tank that pumps and creates himself electricity, right? He also, they have a sewage system. It's a that just takes care of itself. You know what I mean? So it's pretty much everything is self-sustainable. So there's a lot of places in America where you're in the middle of nowhere and you might not interact with the government for weeks, for months, other than to pay your taxes, and maybe you have to go into town to, do something with your car, or do something with this or that. You know what I mean? Contrast that with a big city like Los Angeles or New York City, where it has grown to a size that's unsustainable, right? So it's, I mean, it's just, but it's unnatural. So you couldn't naturally have a city that big, just you doing your own thing. So in order to make a city like that work, you need to have an immense amount of government regulation intervention to make sure that it works properly. You need people to deliver the water. You need people to deliver the electricity. You need government to create stoplights and all this transportation and all this logistics to make a city that is so unnaturally enormous that it couldn't function if everyone just was doing their own thing. You know what I mean? So this is an argument for the liberal mindset, is that they have grown up dependent on the government, meaning that for a good reason, a big city like that could not survive without massive government intervention, right? So therefore they go, well, I love the government. They're what makes my lifestyle possible. I don't understand how anyone could live without the government, so I trust them, right? So that's why they're liberal and say they want more government, they want more government intervention, they want more government control over things, because that's what they're used to. And then on the other side of it, you have the people out in the boonies in Texas or whatever that say, hey, I don't need any government at all. I don't know what we're doing with the government. I want government out of my life because I don't need them. I can survive on my own. And so that's almost a clash. So we go and say, oh, well, we're just different people. We look at all the negatives of our different points of view. But if you really break it down, it's just a product of where we're from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was kind of a spiel, but...
Well, yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, and that's why a lot of people who grow up in the city always want, if they have a taste of that, like, just they go out to the basically where the next house is like 5 miles down. A lot of people don't enjoy that. You know what I mean? Like, they don't enjoy living in places like that because they're just so used to what they're.
But one of the points is that we have this huge division between people politically. And I read something where they were talking about, hey, this is a quote from somebody, that before you can convince somebody to switch sides, first you have to understand why they even believe that in the first place. So when you look at these people, if you just look at the person that has a different mindset than you, a different set of values, and you go, you're wrong because these are my values, even if they are wrong, which I don't know who even makes morality, but let's say, even if they are wrong, like, if you just say, oh, you're wrong, what do you gain? First you go, okay, I might not agree with you, but you believe that for some reason. So unless you think that they're just an absolute horrible human being, you have to accept the fact that they actually believe what they believe. So let's see, why do they believe that? So let me try to understand why they believe what they believe. Before you can't just go around and say, well, 50% of the population is wrong because I'm on this side and they're on that side, so 50% of the population is horrible people. They're probably not horrible people. Why do they think what they think? And I think it's something that can be easily discovered. And that's part of what this podcast is about, is if you take it to another level, how many people look at the successful people that we talk about on the show and go, oh, they're just lucky. They're just way too smart, or they're way too athletic. They're just lucky. There's no way that's possible. But then we break it down and go, okay, are they just crazy people that somehow got lucky? Or did they do it through a simple set of actions and hard work and networking. You know what I mean? So it kind of goes hand in hand. I think that if you look at anything in the world that you don't understand, instead of just giving it a blanket statement of they're crazy or it's weird or that was luck or those are bad people, if you go, wait a second, let me take a step back, use some freedom of thought, and try to understand how they got there. Why do they think that way? Why is that their preference? I mean, and you'd really start to
Well,
get a grip on
well,
the
yeah,
world.
you got to look at it in other people's perspective when it comes to really all aspects of life, not even just politics. In almost everything in life, everyone's heard the expression "put yourself in somebody else's shoes" or "put yourself in their shoes." It's the same thing, and I feel like a lot of people aren't doing that enough. They're not using their freedom of thought
Right.
and trying to think about the
I
way
mean,
other people look at things.
they say there's always the quote that says people fear what they don't understand. You know what I mean? So you always you get scared and then you freak out and then you're like, oh, wait. And that's the same thing with, well, yeah, we just talked about it. The same thing with this show is people go, oh, it's impossible to be successful. It's impossible to achieve massive success because I don't understand how they got there. So it's got to be impossible. But then you start to look through and start to take action and start to actually figure out the steps it takes to be successful. And you're like, wait a second, this isn't as hard as I thought it was. I just have to actually take action. And and then you start to see how some of these people that are massively successful and realize that it's possible for you too.
Well, you wanna know what seems scary to me?
What?
Going to school for 8 years, becoming a doctor.
That's true.
That was my way of transitioning to the person we're talking about today. We kind of we ranted a little bit in the beginning,
Yeah. All right.
but the person we're talking about today, they're becoming a doctor, and they also play in the NFL. They got basically two full-time jobs. One as an offensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs, and another going to school to become a doctor. That's
Right.
just nuts. That's just nuts.
His
Because
name
you
is
hear about, you hear what these football players do to like, stay in shape, and they're working out. They're trying to get better almost every day of the year, and then to also be going to med school at the same time. I
right.
couldn't do it, or maybe I could.
You could. Well, first
I
of
haven't
all,
tried.
you could maybe be the football, but
Yeah, maybe.
his. But yeah. Anyways, his name is Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. He's from Canada, and yeah, he juggles two full time jobs. One as a offensive line for Kansas City Chiefs, and he goes to med school at McGill University in Montreal in the off season. So basically, he has an agreement where he will work his ass off all season, do the best he can, and then in the off season, he gets to miss some practices and miss some events in order to work on his med school degree. And it's actually interesting that he is starting this year. I was doing some research on him, and he wasn't starting at first, and now he's starting. So we go back to what we talked about with Tom Brady and say, hey, maybe it's just having a winning lifestyle, a winning mindset. Someone who arguably might not be putting as much effort into football as some of his counterparts is seeing more success because maybe it's that he's a more well-rounded individual. But
Well,
yeah,
I wouldn't say he's not putting as much effort. I would probably say the way he probably sees it in his head, so he could be so like very productive in both things, is that he can't put 100% of his time into it. So when he does do his workouts and his training and all that, he has to put twice as much effort as the next guy.
right, and that's what we'll talk about later. But as I read, yeah, he definitely takes advantage of both of his jobs. When he's playing football, he's going 100% because one, he's trying to make up for lost time, and two, he's trying to prove to his coaches that he's capable of juggling both. And then when he's in the doctor's office, he is working twice as hard to prove himself and to learn so that he's successful in both areas. And this man's no stranger to success and to trying new things and to really being just an action taking badass. When he was 16, he's taken 2 year long sailing trips with his family. So I don't know how you can spend 2 full years sailing and still have put in enough work as a high schooler to prepare yourself for uh, college and then to medical school and to play in the NFL, because I would assume that if your plan is to play in the NFL, you're probably working your ass off even in high school to get there. But he did that, and obviously he speaks French because he's from Canada, and maybe a lot of people there speak French. He's multi-talented is really the point of it, and it's not so much that he's multi-talented, but it's that he's multi-interested, right? So how many people could have the ability to be as talented as he is? I don't know. There's probably more people. There's probably more people that are capable of being as successful as he is, but just don't even try to do it. You know what I mean? He's very talented individual, definitely, but he also's very motivated and wants to do more than one thing. He wants to do it. He doesn't do it because he has to. He doesn't balance med school and playing in the NFL because he has to. He does it because he wants to. So you're allowed to want or to like more than one thing in life. When we talk about finding your personal definition of freedom, it can balance more than one interest, more than one job. And for me and Nick, it does. Me and Nick have 5 or 6 interests that we're looking at all at the same time, or trying to make headway on. So for this guy, he chose 2, and he's being massively successful in two of the hardest things you can do, in the on the planet.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of athletic and smart people out there. And well, I feel like I don't know if it's just like the education system. I feel like you're kind of taught that in high school though. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to get a scholarship somewhere, for example, they either say get really good grades or be really good at a sport. They never usually say, "Oh, do both phenomenally." Like I know I never heard my counselor tell me you have to do both phenomenally and continue to do both phenomenally to be successful or to get a scholarship. I've always heard one or the other, and that's all they really pushed.
Right. Yeah, completely. And it's even more than that. It's even if let's say you just pick one, like let's say you pick academics, how many times do they say, well, you got to pick a subject? You got to pick something why not have more than one interest academically or more than one interest athletically? And that's what really sparks my interest is when I see people doing that. I've known people that double majored in not just, hey, I have a major and a minor, double majored in economics and, civil engineering. Or I know a guy who did mathematics and mechanical engineering. How do you do this? First of all, how do you do that? How do you how do you do one of those things? And second of all, how do you do 2 of them?
Yeah, you have trouble with just geometry, so I couldn't imagine you going into a mathematics major.
Well, all right, take it easy. I'm pretty good at math.
The
But
circle is round on all ends, on all sides, Mason.
even more, how does this guy take 2 things on completely different spectrums, and then it's almost like it's really, you want to talk about pro. Yeah, the NFL is technically pro, but let's be honest, med school is professional academics. Let's see. This man is a pro player in 2 different fields. How? How does he do it? Some people might say, well, he's talented. Or is it that he is a hard worker? Because I'll read you a quote from him. He says, I try to make practice as often as I could. Sometimes I would get off a shift and a shift on a medical rotation, and practice was a few hours later. I would just head over to the locker room and take a bunch of towels and sleep around on the floor, and then my teammates would kick me in the ribs the next morning when it was time for practice. All right. How many? You know what I mean? Like, this man put in work. He put in a ton of work, and that's why he made it happen. So maybe there are some people now. People. You have to be realistic. There's some of you out there like Nick who you will never play in the NFL. You don't got what it takes physically on the man spectrum. You don't have what it takes. It's fine.
Yeah, or you could be like Mason, who has no hand-eye coordination or any athletic ability except for lifting weights, and you'll never play in the NFL. But
all right, whatever. Neither of us will play in the NFL. Let's just draw that line right now. All right, neither of us. But you could still do something else. You could still do more than one thing. Yeah, it's definitely possible. And when he was talking to his coaches, he told them that he would commit 100% to football when he was in football season, but then in the off season, he would be able to skip practices and certain events to go to med school. And he says that the coaches from these teams that were he was looking into, that were recruiting him, were questioning him, like, how do we know if you've had a bad year, you're not just going to quit football and go back to med school? And it's like, that's a legitimate question. But this is the more interesting part of it, is not the fact that he was going. Well, it is. It's not the fact that the fact that he was going to medical school kind of hindered his ability to get a spot on the NFL. The point is that he had other options. So they might make it out up front, say, well, maybe because you have other options, so we're not going to hire you. But at the end of the day, they did hire him, and he was going to get hired away. The point is that you need to make yourself coveted. You need to make yourself, you need to have enough skills where the employers are coming for you. And that's what we talk about, is if you're not going to control your own source of income and you're not going to have your own business, have so much skill and so much knowledge that you're not looking for an employer. The employers are fighting over you. And that's what's really going on here, is that people were coming to him and trying to get him and going, hey, well, you could just go be a doctor, so why would we want you? Because he had options. He could go anywhere he wanted. And it wasn't like, well, this is your only choice. You either play football with us or you go, work construction because you don't have a degree and you're not educated and you have no other plan other than this. Yeah. He made himself.
Well, I feel like a cool thing about him is, like, when he was going into these interviews with the scouts and stuff, like, he was prepared for it. He saw it coming. So, like, when he did his interview with the Chiefs, for example, like he told them straight up, like, he would focus 100% of the time on football during the season, and then out of season he would go to school, and they were cool with that. Like, I feel like they saw it as, like, this guy has a plan. That this guy knows what he wants to do. He said he would give us 100% during season, and then during the off season he'll continue to work out and go to med school. I feel like from the Chiefs' perspective, they saw it as a guy who's willing to work hard for everything he wants. You know what I mean? They saw the mindset.
They saw the winning mindset is what they saw, because he told them specifically, you don't have to worry about me quitting football. The reason why I'm here is because I love football. They saw it was more than just a job opportunity, because that's one thing. I was talking to a buddy and he was saying, hey, I like college football more than the NFL. And I don't watch enough football to know the difference. But what they say is you could tell the difference between a college team that's still loving the sport and just fighting for the win versus an NFL team where you can tell that they're playing for the money. And I don't know if that's really apparent or not. Have you noticed that, Nick, at all?
Anyone who says college football is better than NFL was either dropped as a child or they didn't get a public education.
I'm not saying better 100% ability-wise, but maybe you see the motivational difference.
Even better to watch. They're faster, they're stronger, they're they're more athletic. They're better at the sport. It, I feel like a lot of people say college is better is because they see like scores like 56 to 47 all the time. In the NFL, average game 24-17. If you like college more than the NFL, it's because you're not a true football fan. It means you don't look at it just drives me insane. They're 100% wrong. NFL is 100 times
Well,
better.
what's
The players, even if they don't, they're doing it for the money, they still have to play well. It's probably even more of a reason.
what's your team, Nick?
Because in for NFL,
Yeah.
The Colts. They're not doing too
Are
hot.
you really a Colts fan?
What can you do? Yeah, I love the Colts.
All right. Why? Why are you a Colts fan?
Who's your team, Mason?
I'm a Patriots fan.
Because Tom
It's
Brady?
Tom Brady.
Only player you can know. So.
No, I know a few. But anyways, back to the learning. Yeah, I mean, this man had a plan, and part of him coming to them with a plan, and that's why they hired him, because they saw that he was being proactive. They saw that he was taking control of his own life, and that's what every one of you listening has to do. That's what we have had to do. This is different because he is at least still going out there, and people are coming and talking to him. But like for the majority of us, no one is going to come and tell you to be successful. No one's going to come and usher you into greatness. You're going to have to do it on your own. You're going to have to take control of your own life. But when you do that, you'd be surprised how successful you are. You'd be surprised how, and I'm not saying go out there and be an asshole and, be the double alpha male who, throws his weight around. But if you go out there with a plan, an articulate plan, and tell people what you want out of life, and you show them an educated plan on how you plan to achieve it, people will accept it. People will accept it. People will be like, this man is an alpha. He knows what he wants, and I'm just going to trust. You ever heard people say you fake it till you make it? It's true. You just got to be confident in what you're doing. And I'm not saying don't have any knowledge about what it is that you're doing, but know enough. But at the same time, confidence and action is way more important than the knowledge that you have. You don't have to be an expert at everything. You just have to know enough to get the job done, and then be confident and proactive about your efforts in the right direction. If you're fighting over some sort of bid with somebody else, you could be anything. It could be some application to some school. It could be an application for a job. It could be to whatever it is, some contract. How do you get selected? And especially at the higher levels, everyone has the same credentials. So what makes you more valuable? It's the fact that you're articulate, you're confident, and you have a plan, and you step forward with a plan and know what you want. And that's the way it works with life too. No one is going to go out there and teach you how to be successful. Because to be honest, a lot of people don't want you to be successful, because the more successful you are, the worse that they look. So no one's going to help you do it. You're going to have to go out there and do it on your own.
Well, like something about Laurent is like he had the discipline to like stay on track on both. He had the confidence even when talking to the Chiefs that he was going to do his plan. Like he told them with confidence what his plan is, and he had confidence in himself that he will succeed his plan.
Right.
And then he also had the work ethic to do it all.
And the worst thing is if you don't, at some point in your life, if you don't come up with a plan and start pursuing your plan and start pursuing your self-interest, someone else is going to use you as a tool for their self-interest. Someone is going to recruit you to be their employee. If you don't know what you want, someone else is going to be like, hey, this is what you want. And it could start as low as your parents. If you're 25 years old, still living at home with no dreams or aspirations, your parents are just going to be like, hey, like, here's a good idea. Why don't you try this out? And then you're just going to do it, and that's going to be the end of you. You know what I mean? If you need to figure out what you want, and it's never too early to start. You kind of know what you want. And that's another thing is there's a lot of people who kind of know what they want, but then they're too afraid to pursue it. No fear, no fear. Educate yourself, start taking action, start taking risk, and you never know where you're going to end up. And that's kind of why it's something that I've thought about. And take this with a grain of salt, but I feel like a lot of the biggest winners in the world were bad at school or were, bad kids, quote unquote. Like, it's people who take control of their own life. And that doesn't mean that you need to make poor choices and cause chaos and be a douche to be successful. But at the same time, the skills that you have as an alpha male who is taking control of their own life, those skills translate into the workforce. They translate into the real world. They translate into business. It's the person who, in any society. I mean, we can use wolves as an example. And in a wolf pack, there's an alpha. You know what I mean? It's in any society, someone is going to rise to the top. Why not be you? Well, why not?
Yeah, there's really, in my opinion, there's no reason why anyone can't do it, and there's always going to be a competition. There's always going to be competition to be the best, and I don't know, to keep it on the football related. He didn't start out as a starter when he joined the team. He had competition all the way, and he was juggling two things at once, and he was just, I don't want to say he's better. He just worked harder than everyone else, and that's how he became the starter. He he became the alpha by his hard work, and he had his plan, and he just went out there and he just
He
did it.
just did it. He just took action. He just said, "I don't know. Here's what I want. Here's what I would want to know. If I talked to this guy, I would want to know what came first: the aspirations to be a doctor or the aspirations to play football. Was it that he was in high school playing football and then he realized he was getting good at football, but then he was also like, well, I might also want to be a doctor afterwards, so I should also go to med school? Or was it that he's always been an academic who was very interested in school and very interested in the medical field, and then just happened to be good at football and said, well, I'm this good at football, I might as well go and try to be in the NFL. I would like to know. I would like to know which one he holds closer to heart. You know what I mean? It's interesting. It's very interesting.
Well, do you know if he's finished med school yet?
No,
I know.
he hasn't. First of all, med
No,
school,
he hasn't.
he's only doing it in the off season, and med school is long and hard. But so it.
Well, because I know he said something like how when he graduates in 2018 or 2019,
Oh,
something like that.
you're right. We should probably look into it.
So, but yeah, so well, what I want to know is he going to be actually doctoring once he's done? Is he going to, like, during the off season, like, he's going to have his own medical practice and he's going to
Well, I
doctor
feel like
people
for
out?
a guy like this, there's unique opportunities. I would say he almost has a celebrity status. I'd feel like that on both sides of the field, whether it's in football or as a doctor, he's going to have opportunities. I would say
And
with
he's also going to have the
right.
money to do, if he wants to start his own
Right.
business,
That was
he'll
one of
have
the
the
biggest
money to
things
start a
was
practice.
no student loans. How much does med school even cost? If you're paying for it yourself, woo! You're working that shit off till you're like 45, 50, maybe longer, depending on how successful of a doctor you are. This man has no loans. He's making $600,000 a year. He has an apartment in Kansas City. He has a house in Montreal. This man buys plane tickets like they're candy, going back and forth. He's making $600,000 a year, and that's his base salary right now. Who knows what he's gonna be making later on? It's incredible. It really is. It's absolutely incredible. It's a man who was drafted in the sixth round, and now he's a starter. You know who else was drafted in the sixth round and uh, changed the game of football forever, Nick?
Tom Brady.
Oh.
Tom Brady was drafted.
Yeah. But just real quick, I'm gonna go through another story of this guy in case you weren't in case you weren't convinced. So there was one time that he he was in Detroit after a game. He got on the plane back to Kansas City. 3 in the morning, he touches down. 30-minute meeting, gets cut loose around 4 o'clock. Takes a cab straight back to the airport from wherever their meeting was. Gets on the first flight, goes to Montreal. This is for one of the biggest tests in med school. So he lands in Montreal. He sleeps 2 hours, studies 2 hours, sleeps 2 hours, studies 2 hours, back and forth for 3 days straight. Takes an exam that he had postponed to go on this trip. Passes with like a 63%, which in med school is passing, and one of the biggest tests you take is over because it was a pass or fail test. The point is that you have people in med school studying for months to get to take this test and to pass it. And this man played a full-on football game. Everyone else is drinking champagne on the way back from the game. He puts on his headphones and studies. He gets back. He sleeps nothing at all. 2 hours sleeping, 2 hours studying for days. For days. And then he takes his test and still passes. I don't even, like, the work ethic required for that, the perseverance required for that, the fact that he found his personal definition of freedom and is willing to put that level of effort into achieving his goal, and the fact that he comes out on top at the end of it, he's a winner. And then he sleeps for 2 days straight because this was his bye week and gets right back into football. So there's no excuses. There's absolutely no excuses. There's no way around it, because here's the thing. There might be an excuse that works, but I would really be hard pressed for one of you listening out there to come up with an excuse that out matches what this man went through to be successful.
Well, a lot of people say going to med school would be too hard. Becoming a doctor is too hard. Like, if they said it was too expensive, all right, I hear that. It is extremely expensive. But if you're saying it's too hard, but this guy played an entire football game and studied for the next 3 days and then took a test, and a very important test, then I would probably say you could probably get through it if you put in even just half amount of the hard work that he put in.
To achieve whatever you want to achieve. And that's even implying that what you're trying to achieve is as difficult as med school or the NFL, which it's probably not. So whatever dream that you're dreaming up, whether it's something that's going to make you $100,000 a year, whether it's fighting for that job in an interview that, you know, is the job you always wanted. And it's not taking away from the difficulty that you're going to face or the action that you're going to have to take to be successful. But what it should do is it should alleviate the doubt in your head that you can make it happen. Because if this man can make it happen, anyone can make it happen. You can make it happen. I can make it happen. Nick can make it happen. And that's what one of the biggest things that me and Nick learn from every one of these episodes that we do is that it just motivates us. It reignites the fire every single day. The fact that all of these people were so massively successful, and it's not unknown to us anymore. We're not looking at these people and saying, well, they're just lucky, because now we realize it's not about luck. I don't know if you can find one person that it was about luck. I don't know. Like, pick one major success that was completely luck. I guarantee you.
Yeah, I can't think.
I guarantee you.
Every person we've looked up, it's always hard work that gets them there.
It's all anyone that you could come up with. I can find a way where they worked hard. Can I get kind of weird real quick? So let's.
Wait, you're not being weird already?
I'm always being weird, because success is weird, but in today's culture. But you go and let's talk about Justin Bieber for a second. People go, okay, this kid just started singing. Well, if you know anything about Justin Bieber, he was born to a 17-year-old mother, so God knows how hard that life was, right? And I remember when I was in, well, fifth grade. It must have been. I think it was fifth grade where kids would be going around and saying, "Hey, look at this video on YouTube of this kid named Justin Bieber. He's in Canada, and check how cool his voice is." Do you know? And yeah, it's not what Tardif is doing. It's not what this guy is doing. It's nowhere near as hard. There's different levels of difficulty. It's not as hard. I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying that as how old was he back then? 16. What he might have been younger than that. To one, sing in public, and two, post his singing on YouTube. That's kind of difficult for a kid. You know what I mean? It's difficult. So how many of you out there, I know there's some of you aspiring musicians, how many of you have left the comfort of your shower to go and get embarrassed on a stage? I guarantee you every professional musician got hit with a tomato right in the forehead. I guarantee you they did. I bet you Eddie Van Halen, I bet you Steven Tyler, I bet you all of these people at some point on their first show, someone booed them. Did they give up and go, "Oh, I suck"? Or did they get back to work and continue to pursue their dream until they became wildly successful?
Well, and another thing about that, like, yeah, a lot of people are scared to go out there and like to go for it because they're scared of the criticism and all that like that. But I feel like all the successful people, and not just in music, is like they hear the critiques and they learn from it. Like they look at it in a different way. They don't look at it like, oh, I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna fail, or if I fail, that's gonna be super embarrassing. They're gonna be like, I'm gonna go here, give it my 100%, and if there's criticisms, I'm going to take those criticisms and I'm going to see what I can learn from it. And then I'm going to come back next week and try again.
Right.
And I'm going to keep trying until I get there.
Right. It's a mindset, guys. It's a mindset for this guy. It's a mindset for Tom Brady. It's a mindset for all of you. And that's why we talk about it. That's our call sign now. It's the switch. Are you going to flip the switch, or are you going to not flip the switch? Screw everything else. It's not as scientific as you think it is. It's, are you ready to flip that switch and start being proactive and start taking action in pursuit of your personal freedom? And if you are, we can continue this conversation, and we will every episode continue to take the next steps after that. But there's no point in you listening to this show if you haven't flipped that switch. So that's the first step. The first step right now is building enough self-confidence, enough proactiveness, and just really allowing yourself to take that first step towards your personal definition of freedom. If you haven't done that, stop listening to the show because you've learned nothing. If you've taken that first step, then this show can work wonders for you. Where then the people that we study every episode can work wonders for you and teach you things and chart to narrow you in on your path. Whether it's a business guy like Elon Musk, whether it's a guy like this, whether it's a athletic person like Tiger Woods, who I don't think we've talked about yet, or anyone, whatever it is, we're going to have an episode for you, but it all starts with flipping that switch, and that's where it has to start.
Yeah, and if you know anyone who hasn't flipped that switch yet, and you don't know how to like explain it to them that they need to flip the switch, you could send them over here, and we're gonna continue talking about the switch to flip, and maybe they'll learn they'll learn about the mindset, and maybe we can help you explain it to them.
Yeah, if you're too nervous to try to convince somebody, I can do it. I've convinced multiple people to start being proactive in my personal life. It's something that I enjoy doing. I like getting out there. And the best part is, and this is the thing, so this is why you might want to send them our way, because a lot of the time you're going to get shot down the first couple of times. I've been shot down multiple times. People have been like, "Oh, dude, you're ridiculous." Yeah, okay. And then, a couple months later, "Oh, can you help me start my own podcast? Can you help me start my own business? Like, what? Show me what you've learned." "Oh, okay. So now you want to do your own thing. All right. Why did we have to waste 4 months convincing you? Imagine if you had 4 months of extra work under your belt." So guys, at some point in your life, if you think that at some point you're going to want more, start now because you're just going to regret that you didn't start now later. Yep. That's pretty much all I got for today, Nick. You got any final parting words?
Just about Laurent. This guy was just a legend, and if you didn't get enough of him on this episode, do your own research. Freedom of thought. We talked about it at the top of the show. Do some research on some of the people we've talked about, and go even deeper with your research. Learn even more.
Give us some episode ideas. We're always open and willing to communicate with you guys. That's what hit us up on any of our platforms, and we can maybe I can learn something from you. But yeah,
We'll talk to you guys next time.